Oh, this probably needs to be like this. See, you need to do it something. Stand down. See, it's upside down. That's what I'm trying to figure out. You probably need to turn the camera a different way. But we need to have this snap too. Well, I don't know what's going on with it because it's the cord that's staying like that. Nah, but it's a cord that's doing that. Oh, there you go. Look, Granny, come in. Granny, look. You see? Huh? Hey, Granny, my mic is on.
Instead, his administration will vote Donald Trump for their internal booking system. He will have to provide his personal data, including his social security number. And his hand will be scanned digitally, not the more familiar fingerprinting with actual ink. And Donald Trump will be joined in court by his attorneys, former federal prosecutor Todd Blanche and Florida's former Solicitor General Chris Kise. They spent the last day or so interviewing local Florida attorneys, but so far have not found any to join the former president's legal team.
And as we wait for Donald Trump to make his way to the courthouse, we're keeping a close eye on the scene outside. We've not yet seen anywhere near the kind of he's embracing some of that could change as we get closer to the agreement. There's no sign of it yet. Trump was asked on Monday if he had a message for his supporters, and here's what he said.
Just stay strong, stay very, very strong, and we're going to bring it back, and we're going to win in that landslide. I believe it'll be one of the greatest.
Can you pass me my phone over there, right by you? In the bed. My phone.
These guys have shot their watch. They've shown how bad they are.
Joining us now is NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett, who is outside the courthouse in Miami. Dasha Burns is at Trump's Doral Golf Resort, where he's been staying since arriving from New Jersey yesterday. Andrew Weissman was former FBI general counsel and NYU law professor, and Joyce Vance is a former U.S. attorney and a law professor at the University of Alabama. Both Andrew and Joyce are also MSNBC legal analysts. So, Laura, let's talk about what Donald Trump is doing.
Look what and see what I sent you. And push on the link. You see it? Look, watch this. Look, you see? You seen it?
Various agencies like the CIA and Department of Defense. So these are not his documents. These are the property of the U.S. government.
Hey, what's up? The other person that's in the live. I'm playing on ps4 right now. If anybody want to add me, it's Wesley Chayar 448. It's Wesley Atkins.
Prosecutors made a showing in D.C. federal court that the crime fraud exception will be applied here, something that doesn't happen very often, something that prosecutors can use when those legal services have been used in the commission of a crime. And the things that show it, the idea here, and the things that come from prosecutors, is that Donald Trump actually tried to get his lawyer to commit a crime. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether any of this evidence that I just described actually comes in at trial. That'll be up to the judge, Judge Cannon. And so that's for a ways off from that down the line. Sure, but that is a very serious indictment. He has maintained that he's done nothing wrong all along, but he hasn't actually addressed the substance of the claims that I just outlined. And that's something that his lawyers will eventually have to confront.
One of the things
just been nagging at me is you got so much detail in this indictment. Tons of conversations that Donald Trump has had. Him on tape, there are direct quotes from him, there's direct quotes from aides. It appears like some people's cell phones might have been obtained by the special counsel. We know what kind of documents they describe Donald Trump as having. They even have more documents that they chose to select few. What Andrew Weissman is not in this indictment? What might still come out at trial?
I think there are two things that are not in the indictment that were notable. One is that, as you mentioned, this is a subset of the secret or top secret documents. But I think that's something we will not see more of, because that is probably intelligence saying there are things that are so sensitive.
What they talking about on the news? Huh?
Indictment of Donald Trump.
Okay.
The second thing that was notable to me is how little was said about evidence.
Y'all wanted to say hi to my granny. Here she go over here. Hey, look. Granny, you seen that? You seen what I showed you?
But talking about it, saying I could have classified it, but I can't now. That happened in Bedminster in a conversation that people behind the voting much better with.
Absolutely, the two instances of actual dissemination that are being charged by the law that are alleged to have happened, but are in Bedminster. But those are not separately charged. In other words, there's a dissemination charge that could have been brought. It was not brought. And one of the things people speculate about is that because the venue, the location for those charges was Bedminster, which is in New Jersey. So is there more to come?
Maybe an indictment in New Jersey?
I don't know. But one of the things that Jack Smith, and I'm thinking I may get Eileen Cannon in Florida, and she put things off. There's no question that could be the basis. And there are dissemination charges that seem to be, from the current charges, seem to be something that could be brought in New Jersey.
Let me ask about who gets to see the discovery. A defendant and his or her attorneys get to see the documents. But would they have to get security clearance? And what would happen if they suggested giving security clearance to the former president? Something that Joe Biden has denied to him specifically, and saying that he had caught in a really interesting interview that he did shortly after he took office.
Very prescient call on his part, given what we now know. But this is the reason there will be some delay in the current case. The answer is yes, defense counsel is entitled to see this in order to defend their clients. That is part of due process in this country, so they will need to have a certain limited type of clearance. And frankly, that will apply to the defendant as well. But it can be tightly controlled. For instance, the defendant may need to go to a certain location and can see the documents, but cannot take pictures, cannot take copies, and cannot communicate with anyone other than his counsel about those documents.
They have to be able to see, the defendant and his attorneys have to be able to see everything that goes to the jury.
Absolutely.
In advance to prepare.
Absolutely.
All right, so Joyce, conveniently, you wrote an entire article on this, and it is absolutely fascinating. It's called Handling Classified Material at Trial. And part of what you write is that in many cases, declassification isn't an option. The prospect of damage is too great to contemplate, as with nuclear secrets. In cases like that, there is a real risk of defendants engaging in gray mail, the practice of threatening to expose critical information in open court if the government insists on taking them to trial. That's just one of the examples you give about the complications, and so it sets up the question that is actually the first question in your article, which is, how do prosecutors try a case when the charges are based on top secret and other classified documents? Joyce?
Right, so very carefully, and I don't say that in a glib way, because prosecutors are charged with taking care, especially after a case is is charged with making sure that classified material doesn't bleed out into the public. You know, Andrew and I both have experience in this area because this statute is used not only in these sorts of retention cases, but SIPA and the need to protect classified information often comes into play when you're handling terrorism cases where these sorts of issues can arise as well. And so in essence, what the statute does is it forces the court, and to some extent it forces the defendant, to make decisions up front about what information they're going to try to offer and put into the record at trial. The judge has to make those decisions quickly so that the prosecution is on notice of just what sort of information is going to perhaps become public. They have other options like trying to create summary documents that are not classified or offering substitutions that are unclassified. And if those sorts of substitutes permit the defendant to still put on the same defense that they could using classified material, then the judge is supposed to sign off on that. You can see how complicated this gets. And one of the interesting impacts of SIPA, the Classified Information Production Act, is that it includes an immediate right of expedited appeal. In other words, if the prosecution here does not like Judge Cannon's decision, they can go straight to the 11th Circuit. That gives them not only the opportunity to appeal her substantive decisions, but if they think that she's off the reservation, it also triggers their ability to ask the circuit to reassign the case or to order that the chief judge reassign the case to a different judge on remand.
And Andrew Mitchell and I are both pointing at Andrew Weiss, he's nodding, talking about this during the break. Tell us a little more. And Andrew's been nodding, Joyce, at everything you're saying on camera.
Well, you should always be nodding with Joyce fans.
I think we've learned that, yes.
I think that's just a very erudite lawyer, but particularly with respect to the law in the 11th Circuit. That's where Joyce has practiced, so you don't get any better than her. And I actually have a question for Joyce, which is, what do you think the odds are, the chances are, if Judge Cannon were to do something with respect to SIPA that really is akin to what she's done before, how rare is it for the 11th Circuit to not just reverse her, but to say we're going to send it back to a different judge?
So, Andrew, this is a patient circuit. It's a collegial circuit. Collegiality is valued here between lawyers and also between lawyers and judges. But there are limits. And where this circuit has drawn a clear line, and they've done it in cases where they've said the judge doesn't have actual bias, but the judge's earlier decisions in this case suggest that they simply can't set aside the path that they've gone down. This seems like a case that's really on all fours with those sorts of decisions, because the ultimate goal when you're thinking about recusal is to make sure that the public can have confidence in the decisions that a court makes. There is no case where that will matter more in criminal law in this century than with this case involving the prosecution of a former president. And so the 11th Circuit will be careful to consider whether, given Judge Cannon's track record, particularly if she makes an egregious mistake in a SIPA ruling, whether it's not time, in the interests of justice and fairness, to go ahead and have a different judge handle the case. And that doesn't mean that it'll be a judge that you and I might pick for this case. There's a good chance that it could be another Trump appointee. That's not what matters here. It's just public confidence in the decisions coming out of this courtroom.
But what impact would that have? Would this take place pre-trial, or would this take place after the jury is sworn in? How do you explain to a jury that all of a sudden there's a new judge presiding?
So this all has to take place in advance of trial, because once that jury is sworn in, double jeopardy is attached. And this is an important point, I think, to make. It's a little bit inside baseball, but we give trial judges broad discretion over issues like admissibility of evidence. And so it's important to straighten out whether Judge Cannon is, in fact, a judge who can handle this trial earlier than that. That's why these SIPA motions, where the statute explicitly gives prosecutors an immediate right to appeal and orders the 11th Circuit to handle it on an expedited basis, that's where that might be fertile ground for making this consideration, or perhaps other rulings if she suppresses the search warrant or if she reverses Judge Howell from the District of Columbia, who has said that the attorney-client privilege should be pierced here. All of these issues will be important for the government to handle well in advance of trial.
But in the meantime, we have an indictment and we have an arraignment today. So let's go to Dr. Burns, who is outside Doral, where Donald Trump spent the night. Dasha, tell us what you're seeing and hearing where you are.
Remember, you were putting your phone together.
Well, Chris, we're not seeing any of those massive crowds, of course, but we are hearing the noise level come up a little bit here as there are a handful of mostly pro-Trump protesters here. I'm going to just actually ask my cameraman, Randy, to show you just a little bit of what we're seeing. It's a bit hard to see from our camera position here, but some folks with Trump flags, with anti-communist flags, anti-George Soros flags here making some noise. You'll likely hear some honking from folks driving by, honking mostly in support. That's largely what we've been seeing. Again, noise level escalating here over the last half hour or so as we expect the former president to make his way toward the courthouse. Within the next hour or so, we also just saw about 20 to 30 officers on motorcycles head into the Trump Doral property here. Again, we're anticipating that he will be leaving anytime, and we will bring you those images as soon as we get them. And Chris, we don't expect to hear from the former president before he heads to court, but we have been hearing from him on social media. He has been putting out a flurry of posts on Truth Social. We've also already received several fundraising emails from Team Trump, and he will be holding a fundraiser tonight. And I think that is so important to emphasize because it really shows the thinking in Trump world right now that while the legal process here is very serious, and any lawyer you talk to will tell you how grave this is in terms of the legal situation for the former president, politically, they are very much looking to use this as an advantage in the primary. They are looking to fundraise off of this. They are looking to rally support and gain momentum off of this. And we've seen that happen with bumps in polling, with bumps in fundraising in the past. And while this does seem legally to be very different than the past indictment and then previous legal challenges, politically, they are treating this very much the same and making the point to supporters in the Republican Party that this is a system that is not coming after Donald Trump, it is a system that is coming after the America First movement. And that is the powerful message that the former president is able to send to the Republican Party. And that's what makes it so difficult, Chris, for his opponents, his rivals in the primary, to really break from him and to go too harsh in terms of their attacks because they are worried about alienating that base, Chris.
Well, they're worried about Donald Trump training his fire on one individual and just being done in the primaries because of it. Donald Trump's been doing that, using that tactic of saying it's not me, it's all of us now successfully, well, to a degree. Since 2015, after all, he lost 2020, and you could argue he was the reason Republicans lost largely in 2018, 2020, and in 2022, the Senate side. That was the view from Doral. Let's get the view from outside of the federal courthouse in Miami and go to NBC's Yasmin Vesuvian. So, Yas, what does it look like out there?
I'll tell you, we're under 2 hours from when the former president of the United States is going to be arraigned here for the first time at a federal courthouse, right? History in the making. And it's curious, Katie, Chris, Andrew, to watch because it seems as if the security here is somewhat disorganized. And I say that because you've got a lot of security presence from what we're told, right? Miami PD, Miami-Dade, U.S. Marshals, DHS, Secret Service, even your choppers above as well. And you've got areas cordoned off with this kind of yellow police tape, but there's no hardened barriers, right? And there doesn't seem to be a lot of communication happening between these several agencies that are on.
Hey.
You've got protesters behind me. I'll step out of the shot for a second for Carlos to push in on that. You've got an individual here with a sign up saying free Trump, many individuals behind them saying Trump 2024. But earlier I saw a protester here saying lock him up, right? And there was a confrontation between that individual and Trump supporters, and the security on the ground had to get in between them to kind of calm things down. And you think about that juxtaposed to what we're about to see happen, right? At this federal courthouse, a former president be arraigned, right? We don't necessarily know if he's going to be coming above ground through the doors behind me in that area that is open where you see police cars
kind of blocking the doorway. I'll step out of shot again. Or he's going to be coming down with his motorcade behind the street, behind this federal courthouse, and going underground. We don't have confirmation on either one of those, but all of you know the former president and his actions and the way in which he makes decisions. You think back to the conversations that we know he had with his own Secret Service on January 6th, right? After he made that announcement at the Ellipse that he was going to march on the Capitol, and then the Secret Service nixed that, right? We imagine similar conversations happening with inside Trump camp this time as well. Likely the former president wanting to give away what he did in Manhattan when he showed up for that arraignment, but the security situation here is quite different. You have a federal building right in front of you that you can't see off camera, but behind this building are all public buildings, right? So that is a major security threat to the former president of the United States, and I imagine likely a threat the Secret Service does not necessarily want to take. So as we've been here throughout the day, I've been here since around 8 a.m. or so, right? The presence has been building amongst protesters. We're expecting a busload of protesters to show up from Orlando around 2 p.m. to protest in a cordoned off area.
Is that show almost gone
to
off?
the other side of the park, but again, as we're getting closer
That show almost gone
to
off?
this
Not
3
yet.
p.m.
You
deadline,
want me
the
to turn
former
it down
president showing
some?
up here, we
I
imagine
mean, you can
all
keep
of
it up
this
if you want.
is going to kind of be increasing towards that time.
Yasmin, Vesuvian, thank you so much. Setting the scene there. Andrew and Katie and Chris, just looking at that, it's so different from what you would see in Washington around Capitol Hill post January 6th.
Different than what you saw here in New York.
Yeah, exactly. And it does seem like sort of very loosely organized, although we don't know if this other busload is going to come. We just know that some are expected from Orlando. But it does seem as though, and now we're seeing the motorcade. We're seeing at least the lead bikes, which are the highway police coming, which could be at Gerald. Dasha, what are you seeing there? Is Dasha Burns?
Some officers now exiting. We are seeing some officers now exiting the Trump Doral property here. Police officers holding the traffic here at this intersection. We see a lot of onlookers here watching for what is about to happen here. So he might be on his way out right now. The former president on his way to the courtroom to be arraigned for this federal indictment. But we are now no longer seeing any more movement here. So that might have been just the initial round of officers exiting ahead of the former president. We will keep you guys updated as we see anything else here, but certainly a lot of folks anticipating what is about to happen here.
We're going to keep watching that. Andrew, I want to ask you about just the federal courthouse itself. As we understand it, there's an underground entrance, and he's not going to be photographed. We're not going to see him inside. So I wonder if that's part of the reason why there's not more security around the building. He's never going to be outside of it.
Yeah,
He's going to go right into the middle of it.
So I think there's sort of two reasons. One, a lot of times when this happening behind the scenes is a lot more than you think.
Yeah.
And having been at the FBI for events that are high risk and high profile, there typically is a lot that's being done behind the scenes. There's a but C for that, but see January 6th, a notable failure. But I just can't imagine that's going to repeat itself. The other is exactly what you're saying. So, for instance, in the Washington, D.C. courthouse, unlike New York, there was a way to bring defendants into the courthouse. They did not walk outside. It is, for safety, it is much easier. They go right in. The marshals are there. And I believe there may not be an advance discussion about where it will be. I'd be very surprised if the Secret Service do not insist that there is the underground route, so you will not see the former president enter the
We'll
courthouse.
see the
What's her name?
motorcade, but we're not going to see the president unless he decides at some point to stop and to talk to people before he has his later event tonight at Bedminster. But we don't know anything about that quite yet. We were talking earlier about cracks within the Republican Party regarding Donald Trump, and so far the House has not really been cracking. We heard Kevin McCarthy in the whataboutism saying he doesn't like President Biden. and the documents being in the garage. We've largely heard that from a lot of House Republicans. We heard something different from
Yes.
Ken Buck, and I would like to
Joyce,
play
Margaret
it.
Jackson's sister.
Congressman Buck.
I said my name is Joyce, Margaret Jackson's sister.
I would
My
not feel
sister is
comfortable with a
5033.
convicted felon in the White House. So we'll see how the case plays out. The case plays out, and we'll see how the evidence is presented and what the defenses are. But let's just look at Donald Trump's words in 2016. He said that Hillary Clinton was unfit for the White House because of the way she handled classified information. He said that she wasn't even qualified to have a low-level State Department job because of the way she handled information. So I think his words have set the standard that America will look at in determining whether he is fit for president.
So Ken Buck is part of the Freedom Caucus, which is currently giving Speaker McCarthy a bit of a headache in the House. They're holding up legislation. I've had a lot of conversations with Congressman Buck over the years, and he's been, when everyone's taking line A or line B, he's often taking line C, especially out of step is the wrong way to describe it, but not necessarily in line on all issues. With the Republican Party, this is just another example of it.
He's more independent. And he's taking on the speaker.
That's what she got in this white t-shirt.
He's also on judiciary, he's on foreign affairs. When you look at least a very brief
if you don't mind, with somebody that says her, put it on, she says she feels warm that being down.
So he's somebody who has a deep knowledge.
Okay, this George,
There's a lot of people who are on those committees who are currently defending the president's actions, but there are,
as you say, he has some record of looking at things in a little different way.
There are some cracks now appearing within the Republican Party, and again, notable that Nikki Haley, presidential candidate, was coming out in complete defense of Donald Trump a couple days ago, and is now starting to say, well, it is reckless.
But, partly she is a former ambassador to the United Nations. She's dealt with national security. She sat on the National Security Council. Her husband, as she pointed out, was deployed yesterday when she made those comments for a year. He didn't say he deserved it. And so it's very appropriate for her to say that there are people, lives of men and women in our military that are at stake. But as you point out, Katie, this was the first time she had shown any real distance with the former president. Well, one of the questions that we've had all along was whether there might be some cumulative effect beyond what happened in Manhattan. There were other indictments. I would argue that maybe even less than a cumulative effect. It is the difference between what's at stake. And I'm not in any way diminishing the case that they're bringing in Manhattan, but this is something of a different level altogether. Absolutely. And I think there was a lot of discomfort, Andrew, among legal experts and some critics. The case that went first because it was subject to a lot of criticism. You could see the military.
This gonna be in the live stream, guys. I'll probably live stream.
We see more of the cycle, so it looks like